Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie Podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
Hello.
Jim, we moved back a half an hour this week, and Jim might have forgotten, so he's playing Warframe right now, so maybe he'll show up in a half an hour. I tried getting his attention, but you know how you get when you're playing a game and you're like, screw everything else. So...
turn off notifications.
Maybe, yeah, exactly. So maybe, hopefully he'll show up in a little while. But folks, we have a guest this week. Joining us from Boston, Massachusetts is Kevin Lynn, the developer of Starcom Nexus. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you because your game, I'll tell you, your game is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say. I love to hear that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. People have tried to make Starflight games before, and one of the most, let's just say it, one of the most infamous examples of this was a game called The Long Journey Home. Now, the space stuff wasn't too bad, but it was the Rover stuff, the planetary landing stuff that made you want to throw your PC out the darned window. It was just terrible. So what you've done is you've kept all that awesome exploration stuff, real-time combat, all that stuff, but you've made the planetary stuff more of like kind of a text-based choose your own adventure thing, which is just works great in my opinion.
Thank you. It's interesting you should bring that up because I struggled for a really long time trying to figure out what to do with the planets because, I mentioned this to you earlier, was that the game was based on this pretty simple Flash game that I'd made back in like 10 years ago. And I said, I want to make it more like Starflight. Starflight is the goal, but a modern version of that. And how do I do the planet interaction? Because I don't feel like it just a straight port of what they did just doesn't, I think, work with sort of modern games or sort of it's not right because people's expectations would be a lot different. And so I played with a bunch of different mini game type ideas before I finally just sort of, I think I was playing Out There. I have.
Yeah, Out There is great. Yeah. That's a good one.
So I was playing that. I was like, oh, well, what if I don't need a mini game? What if like just the encounter is the mini game? Just skip trying to make the player do something to get to the whatever is on the planet and they just interact with it.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. And it just works because it makes the flow of the game just so not fluid, but straightforward. It keeps the flow moving. You're not like hitting this speed bump of, oh, I'm having fun flying around the solar system. Oh, now I gotta land. I mean, with Starflight, it wasn't that bad. But with some games, it's like, oh, God, I don't want to go down. Oh, fine.
Yeah, I really wanted to avoid any situation where it was kind of like I felt like there's something that either feels like just an unnatural time gate or just it just isn't working. It's just not fun. It doesn't have to be action every second, but I don't want to feel like, oh, another planet, it's going to be a chore to land on.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about your game is the simplicity of the interface. Like, I love that the X key is a contextual interaction key for everything. Like, that is fantastic.
Yeah, so one of the goals early on was I thought, well, maybe this game can work with a controller, and I'm not 100% sure that that's going to happen, but I think keeping that in mind as a goal kind of made me think of ways to simplify the interface so that everything is kind of, and that kind of works well with keyboard and mouse too. So you're not adding on all sorts of other keys for people to have to learn and just sort of giving it an unnecessarily steep learning curve.
Yeah, and the keys are very simple, yet there's so, I mean, I love how even though there's like one key to interact with the universe, it changes depending on what you're doing and where you're going.
Well, thank you.
I'm
glad you like that.
It's just usability is a big deal to me. Especially in my field, usability has become. I work in SEO, if you all don't know, search engine optimization, and usability is almost as important is as important as website design, as content. It's just so important because if you have poor usability, people are going to leave your website. And that's the same with video games. Like if you have poor controls, poor menus, if you're getting in the way of the gamer, then they're not going to want to play your game. And you keep it so effortless that it allows the player to just enjoy the joy of exploration, which is just so important to this game. So well done. We are very,
thank you,
very happy.
Well, like I said early on, I just Space Game Junkie is, when I first started thinking about it, it's like, this seems to be, I discovered you as a result of sort of market research for this game. And this was like, I don't know, 6 years ago or so. And thinking,
Wow.
Looking at your audience and being like, Space Game Junkie is the first press I am going to contact when this game is ready to be played.
And I was,
well, that's an honor.
Yeah, I feel we feel very honored. And we.
and I'm honored to be on your show. We've got a nice little mutual admiration society here.
So basically, folks, we've been talking about the game as if you all know what the hell's going on. We kind of jumped ahead because we're so excited. Basically, Starcom Nexus is a game where you have a ship. It's a modular ship that you can move components around and change. Like once you go to a base, you can use a blueprint system to make a pre-made ship, or you can make it yourself using a very easy and efficient, like y'all know I hate building ships, but in this game it's great, it's fine, it's simple, just boom, 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 done. Really great. You're basically, in a lot of these games, you're transported to another end of the galaxy and you have to find your way home, yada yada. That's typical sci-fi stuff like this. But the thing that excels about this game is basically you have this map, and the map is connected by wormholes and some kind of gate. What are the gates called? I can't remember. What?
They're called gateways. Nexus gateways.
Yeah, Nexus gateways. So basically, you have multiple ways to move around, but you also have the Starflighty method if you want of just pointing your ship and going, and you could actually find stuff off the beaten path if you just because the map is entirely like real time. It's not like the systems aren't like instanced, right? You're just going.
Yeah, it's a continuous open world.
Yeah, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. Because a lot of these games, they do the instance thing where you jump from sector to sector, system to system, and they're all different bubbles.
Yeah, there's one of the goals was to have that because I wanted to be able to have stuff that players can discover and have clues in the game where people sort of discover something where it describes like, you find a primitive tribe on a planet. They've got some mythos about, two blue-eyed sisters. And then maybe you're thinking like, oh, that sort of sounds like those binary stars that I encountered. And if you follow a line from there, you'll find a star hidden off, a planet hidden off, but you have to like go way out in space to find it. And I think that was kind of one of the main reasons that I wanted to have the whole connected continuous space.
And I have to say it's really impressive because I'm running an older computer. It's what is it, an i7 920 with a set GTX 770. It's on the older side. And even though you have this entire universe loaded, basically, I didn't have any slowdowns. I didn't have any stuttering. It ran great. It loaded quickly. So well done. Very stable. Just really well done. You've been doing these beta phases to help with that, right? You've been doing rounds of closed beta testing. Right?
Yeah, I think that's something that was kind of something that's turned out really well. I think it had to do with kind of a little bit with my anxiety of putting it out there. I was sort of like, well, let me back up a little bit. Let me tell the background story.
Okay.
So about 10 years ago, I made my second ever Flash game called Starcom and put it out on the web. And I didn't really have any expectations for it, but it kind of developed a bit of a cult following over the years. I think it's had about 2 million plays, worldwide over the decade, and even today, people still play, play it, which is despite the fact that Flash is like disabled in every browser you can download. And after the fact, I had this idea. I was like, oh, I should maybe try to put some sort of mailing list sign up for it out there. And I was able to, even though I did it much too late, people were still interested in the game and found the sign up form. And so that gave me an initial pool to pull beta testers from. And they have been super, super helpful because, when you're a developer, you get so close to a game that you can't see what's working and not working.
Right. And that, I have to say, it's very different from what a lot of developers are doing these days with it just going into early access and letting just anybody kind of beta test. You're kind of taking a larger leap of faith here, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I kind of did the mistaken thing of, and I got a little bit lucky there, where I just sort of worked on it for a long time, got into a pretty good shape, and then I put it in front of the beta testers in August of this year. And of course, but there was always the danger that I had actually like made some really terrible design decisions, and you can't necessarily tell as a developer because you just don't necessarily see it. But fortunately, the first round was like, yeah, this is great. They had some excellent feedback. They had suggestions that really, I think, have helped it over the iterations. And we just finished the third closed beta, and there's probably going to be at least one more before early access.
You're shooting for December for that, is that correct?
That's right. Yep. I haven't got the exact date nailed down, but before whenever Steam's winter sale is currently the goal.
Okay. And we usually don't know that until it gets leaked about a week or two beforehand.
Yeah, but you can sort of guess. Like, I feel like early December should be safe.
Yeah. That should. Yeah. If
I mean, granted, I know, but I can't say.
Yeah, don't they tell developers? Don't they tell you all?
Yeah, they email us in advance and they let us know, oh yeah, there's a sale coming up. If you want to set your whatever your percentages are for your DLC or for the base game, etc. Yeah, you can do that in advance because you don't want to do that at the last minute.
No, you. I'm sure Steam wants to give you plenty of time. Steve. I said Steve. Steam wants to give you... I'm going to open a new digital distribution platform called Steve and confuse everybody. Like, does it come with a Steve key? No, I'm sorry. I'm rambling a little bit.
But you have to be named Steve. Only people named Steve can play.
That's right.
There's a one Steve. There's a trope called one Steve limit, and it's literally that.
So store.stevepowered.com.
Hi, Jim.
Hey. You guys are doing the podcast like a half hour early now. That's me how I know. I come in and I'm like, boy, they're really talking to this guy a lot. Aren't they going to save it for this? Oh, no. So
I apologize.
Well,
I should have been
back this week.
I should have been more proactive in my reminders. I apologize. But we moved back half an hour because I just think it's nicer to start at the top of the hour than the half hour. I just seem
what I think. I think there needs to be a lot more of this game because I played it for about 3 hours or something, and I unlocked as much of the map as you can. And I started out, I was very afraid of bigger ships, and by the end, the enemy was telling their children horror stories about me. It was like they'd sit around a campfire and tell about the human that like killed hundreds of them. So yeah, I think the power curve's about right. And then you throw things in front of me that is still spooky, right? It's like, oh, I can kill those guys. And then I go into the next system and then it's like, oh, well, now the Sentinel things are here. Well, those are pretty tough, but then I can kill those. And then I go into that last system and there's that giant carrier. And I know from fighting one of the star bases that fighters are no joke. So it was like, well, let's not anger the carrier. But finally, I've had to do it, and I almost killed it, but it smoked me. But yeah, so basically, the only thing that was limiting me at that point was I just could not get more research points from doing exploration things to make my ship any cooler. But I would say that the game is a series of correct design choices that seem to do the right carrot on the stick, with the challenge being pretty well adjusted to with what you get, right? Because you feel a little bit overpowered, and then you go in the next system and it's like, oh yeah, I'm screwed again. So yeah, it's cool. It's the nice like roller coaster of power rather than a continuous, like
Good.
climb up into heaven.
Can you guys still hear me? We just had a little light flicker here.
Yeah, here you go.
Oh,
Good.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, we lost power earlier today, and then I was like, "Oh no, I'm gonna miss the podcast." But then they got it back, so but I think we're good.
Well, worst comes to worst, you could have used your phone on Discord. Yeah,
I didn't even think about that.
yeah.
Knock on wood, though. Don't have to go to that.
Yeah, thank goodness.
So,
go ahead.
Other thing that I'm really digging is I find that this game, as opposed to like Star Control Origins, right, where you go to the planet and it's the same deal. It's like, I need resources to make my ship cooler, so I'm going to land on the planet and do something. Well, in this game, you go down to the planet and it's a text thing, right? But you have like a puzzle to solve, maybe. That diving thing, I lost a couple of crew to that, and I was just like, yeah, we're done with you. But it's kind of tough. It was kind of like I kept waiting to be told I was eaten by a grue.
That was a little bit. I kind of wanted that to be like a little Zork hidden reference. Just, I think people don't generally like mazes, but I wanted to have kind of one little like throwback to adventure games, to have like okay, you now have to solve the mini maze to get the challenge.
Oh yeah, and it's a thing too. If you're
many muds, that was a nice throwback, I'll say.
Yeah, and if you're careful, you're not going to lose a guy. But I decided to be brave and stupid and lost 2 guys, and I was like, okay, well, I'd have to get the graph paper out for this. So
well, I'm really glad that you guys were on this beta, because in the previous beta there was a bug and the maze was unsolvable. And
oh no!
I was so disappointed, because I hate to put something out and then learn that there's something that's like players are going to waste, a half hour trying to do something that they can't do. And that just gave me such a bad feeling. And there was a similar bug in this beta as well. There's like a clue you can get that points to a point in space, and you go there and it takes a long time to get through. And because of the bug, there's nothing there. So hopefully if you guys have played the game and you got the clue, you didn't actually trek out there.
I got in about 4 hours. I don't think I encountered that particular issue.
You would definitely know. I definitely heard from the beta testers on that one.
Other thing as far as the scaling of the technology and stuff goes, is that as you get into the more the better range of your passive scanners, it's not just detecting enemies, but then it's like, oh wait, there's planets out there I didn't see before, or there's a whole jump line that I could go to that I didn't see, and you'd had to like wandered around in the dark for a while to see it before that. So it's a way of having the technology actually open the map up without like, oh, I've developed a new jump engine that can go further or whatever. It's just like, oh no, you can actually see those things over there. Nothing really prevented you from seeing
the stuff's out there. That's the interesting thing, is the stuff
Yeah.
is out there already, and
you just don't see it because you're focused around where you jumped in and the couple of planets there. But once you have a wider circle of vision, it's like, oh hey, there's much more stuff in this system than I saw. So that's what I find kind of neat, is like, yeah, if you want to cruise around and hunt for stuff in the dark, then you can. But if you buy the bigger sensor package, then it's just like, oh, now the map has gotten bigger for me. So I dug that. Also like that you're not stuck in the jump lanes, because you can, like manually go between stars and stuff. And, it's like, there'll be like a brown dwarf that's out in a gas cloud. It's got a bunch of asteroids, and you just have to hoof it out there. You can't, just like take a wormhole to it. That's kind of cool. I found that I got an unusual amount of satisfaction out of the asteroid mining once I'd actually beefed up my lasers quite a bit, because I could just sort of sit there with the advanced tractor beam and the better lasers and just like mine out the whole field on the screen without moving around. So that was pretty cool. And I like, does that stuff regenerate or respawn after a while?
Currently, no. I kind of have. I mean, it certainly could. It's currently set so that it remembers how many asteroids there were in the asteroid field, and it's a finite resource. But I have been sort of toying with the idea of making that a sort of slowly renewable resource, because there are a couple of them in the game, and it's always a tricky balancing issue. There was one right now where I don't know if you remember. There's like a mining facility that if you don't loot it, it will gradually replenish a mineral over time, and you can go back to that planet and re-harvest.
Oh, yes.
But then people pointed out that you could just get obscene amounts. Like the balance was way, way off, and people were just, completely decking out their ship just from this one planet, which was sort of supposed to be kind of like an Easter egg. But I'm glad you're liking the asteroids, and I'm just trying to figure out the right balance, because I don't like games where it's where grinding asteroids is like a major component. So I was a little bit worried about putting too many of them in there. I know you start with an asteroid field as kind of like a part of the tutorial, but I felt that was sort of people could just pop off a few asteroids and then move on.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is it never got tedious. It was just a chance to play with my ship a little bit.
Yeah,
but
they're nice.
It didn't overstay its welcome. It was just like, oh, okay, well, I clean this system out and move on. But it's a thing where, it's necessary to hunt those belts down, because I was pretty titanium poor, the whole time, because, you max your ship out on modules. I ended up with like a 16 module ship by the time I was done. And it was pretty cool. And I had enough guns that I could deal with everything but that carrier. Carrier was still a little rough. But other thing that I liked was, in order to get the technology to actually deal with some of the guys that are in some of the systems, because you get there and it's like, well, these ships are a little bigger than I really want to deal with. But you can wait until the enemy patrol goes away and then sneak in and get an away team down there and get some XP and then run away. And that's kind of cool, because it's like, you don't like implicitly put in, it's like, hey, or explicitly rather, you don't explicitly throw like, hey, there's a stealth section here, you have to stealth, it's like you get a cloaking thing or whatever. No, that's none of that. It's just like, just wait, be patient, wait for your opening, duck in there, steal the cookies and get out. and I like that.
It's very organic feeling.
Yeah. The other thing is, I thought that the Nexus points are placed rather well. And can you warp only between Nexus points, or a Nexus point can throw you into a system where there isn't one?
They're basically straight. They're sort of like the flux lines from Starflight. So they're fixed point, A to B, and then you have the gateways where any gateway can take you to any other gateway that you want to.
Okay, yeah, it's the big travel system things that I like. Yeah, well, I think the gateways are spaced out pretty nicely, because it's like, oh, it's not in every system, but whenever it becomes like, I'd really like to go back to home base, and boy, what a pain in the ass it would be to have to navigate back through 100 wormholes to get back there. So you can just jump from anywhere on the map, like right back to home base, and then come right back to where you were, and that's very cool. Yeah. But it still makes you work to get them, because they're not super obvious. It's not like you pop in the system and, hey, here it is. And again, the scanner thing, because some of them I didn't see until I had a better scanner, and then I'm like, oh, there is one here. Okay. So yeah, it's good times. I'm hoping that in the full game there's more interaction between like different races and stuff, and the planets themselves. If there was people on the planets that sometimes give you a quest to go do stuff, because we played a lot of Drox Operative here, and that's one of the things that's really cool in Drox is there's planets that don't like each other, and they'll ask you like, go over there and do something to them for us.
Yeah, I want to just swing it around, because we were talking sort of just before we started that, you guys, I design and work on a lot of gaming, but I don't have a lot of time to play games. And I think you guys are kind of domain experts, especially in the space themed genre. And so if you guys want to talk a little bit about what kind of features both you and your audience likes, that's just super helpful to me, because
don't worry, that will come up. We will have ideas for you. Do not worry. that almost always happens. We do have a question.
Yeah, if there is I was going to say, if there was some kind of space Pokemon that you
Eh.
went around and you had to like take pictures of.
That's Serialum 4. That's going to be the next Serialum game. No, we do have a question from the audience. McKecht, I hope I said that right, over on YouTube, is asking if there are derelict ships for which to find equipment in.
It's funny you should ask, because those two questions are actually, or those two comments, Jim's comment and that question are a little bit connected in a bit of content that I'm working on now. And I don't want to spoil anything, but one of the things that I've added in the next version are comets. And these are kind of, they're fixed. They have fixed elliptical orbits. Like once you track them, you know where it is, but you have to find them. There's one, and there's sort of different varieties, different colors, and you have to get close enough to and then they're discovery points, but they also can be clues to things. And so that's all I'm going to say on that topic there, but say that ties into your viewer's question.
Okay. Now this game's a little different in the fact that you don't like find equipment in loot. You basically research it and then you have access to it whenever you want, as long as you have the resources to build it.
Mostly, yeah. There are a couple cases where you can't build something until you have found a piece
of technology that sort of gives you a clue as to, we can deconstruct this and figure out how to build it.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So like you can't build missiles until you've like killed a ship that happens to drop an intact missile launcher, and then you can research missile launcher.
That's clever.
which again, I thought the pacing of that was like you have to deal with somebody that's got one and you don't, and then you get one. So that was kind of interesting because it puts you on the receiving end of it first, and then it's like, how am I going to deal with this guy who's throwing missiles all over the place?
Yeah, and that kind of works a little bit as foreshadowing, where players say like, okay, now I'm being shot at with somebody who's got lasers. Maybe I'm going to get lasers soon.
Oh, that's neat.
Or not, depending on whether or not you're very competent in combat.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
you get lasers to the face. And then
you can get a big mirror and then point the laser back at them, maybe.
One thing I do love about the combat is that it's not exact. Like, even though the cursor is right on your enemy, you're not always going to hit. Because you're not, like, you're using crew to aim, right? You're not using, like, just these super accurate computers. It's your crew that aims, I'm guessing.
In the game lore, there's sort of basically you've kind of got like the low end tech, so you can actually that is an upgradable tech, so you can get your plasma beams. So at start they're sort of accurate, but then you can get them very accurate if you go down that tech path.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I had like 6 on my ship toward the end. I never researched missiles. I just went right for the plasma. And it was interesting because until I researched the tech to get the accuracy up, it became kind of a rapid fire shotgun, and but it wasn't quite accurate enough because once you start dealing with the bigger ships where it's like I really need to blow a particular piece out of him.
Right.
You know, it's kind of the Tootsie. It's like the Tootsie Pop thing. It's like how many lasers does it take to get to the candy center? You know, where he blows up.
That was something that I am not sure if I've gotten right yet, but that was a goal. Like, for example, the Sentinels, the ships are designed in such a way that you can usually shear off a pretty vital section if you either get close enough or have good enough targeting. So like the interceptors and the carriers, like they're still going to be dangerous, but if you can chop off a big chunk of them, there's usually like a weak point that if you can cut through, they're sort of more dealable, you know, because like once a part breaks off, the whole thing, like that whole part blows up, and then you just have like a third, like, you know, 2/3 of the ship to deal with.
Yeah. What I ended up doing was I ended up boosting up my accuracy and range, and then I would chop off their engines and kill them from range because I was out of weapon range. So they were very much disabled at that point.
Totally.
Yeah, on the big carrier, you have to hammer at that thing for a while before the pieces come off. So there was an engine that I shot off, and it was just a nice little graphical touch that I noticed where when the engine blew off, it didn't just explode and fall off. It was kind of like if you had a balloon in your hand and you let go and it goes around the room. Yeah. It was like the engine did a couple of loops and then exploded.
Yeah, that was a bug, and then I was like, you know what? I'm going to keep that in there. That looks good.
Yeah, no, it looked
Sometimes
very
the bugs
intentional.
are awesome.
Yeah, I looked at that and I was just like, damn, that's cool. How do you do that? Well, now we know.
Yeah,
It was a bug.
I didn't fix the thing that stopped it from happening.
Happy accidents.
Totally good.
Yeah, but I like the stuff on the planets though. Whenever you land there, because it's not a thing where it's like, okay, drive the rover around and pick up the stuff and you got to find. Because I don't see a point to that in Star Control. Is just like, okay, well, I'm not really in any danger down here. I'm gonna just pick this stuff up because it's more of you make an interesting captain's choice. It's like, do you want to risk your crew's lives or not? For the risk reward of, do we send the guy through that portal and see what happens? We could get some science out of it. He might die. And I don't know if that stuff's randomized at all or that's just a set deal. But I think I would actually randomize it so there is some risk to it, not just like the player remembers like, oh yeah, if I see that puzzle, it's always safe.
Okay, yeah, that's a good suggestion. Currently, it's usually random range, so it might be that you get lucky and nobody dies. But usually it's usually like 0 to 2 crew. One thing that I'm trying to work on is ways to make it feel like a little bit of a cost to losing a crew, as opposed, it's not just. I mean, currently there's kind of if you need more crew, you have to go back to the station, and your repair is a little bit slower if you're short on crew. But I'm also trying to think of ways that just sort of the player feels a little bit of, not necessarily, like red shirt level loss, like not like Spock loss, but red shirt loss. Just like, oh, I kind of would have preferred not to lose anybody.
Yeah, well, depending on how much crew you can have in your ship, let's say it's like a crew per block plus a few extra, right? So if I got a 16 block ship and I'm down to 12 crew, then I got 4 blocks that aren't going to do anything because there's nobody there, or those would perform at like under. I don't know. I don't want it to turn into like a worker management thing either.
Yeah,
you zoom in and like say this guy's going to stand in this room. No, but yeah, I do like that there's other things going on. I mean, this is a Star Trek-ass game, right? Is a lot of these games are just straight combat stuff. Or hey, I made a block-based physics game that you shoot and knock pieces off, and those are fun, right? But what I see going on here more so than that's like secondary to me. To me, it's more like a Starflight kind of deal where it's just like I'm cruising around, I'm talking to aliens, I'm trying to solve some puzzles, figure out where things are.
It's like the first part. It's like the first part of the Next Generation. It's like the first part of a Next Generation episode where they're cataloging gaseous anomalies. Let's go out there and find stuff. And then all of a sudden stuff hits the fan. And that's what it reminded me of anyway.
And I would empower the player to make some poor political choices too. Like if you just open fire on the wrong people, then they're not going to like you. you might have to like earn that back or something. Like you see the lizard guys, the Saurians or whatever they're called. And what happens if I just open fire on them? You can aggro them.
Yeah, you can aggro them, and they will. They're pretty tough. They'll cut you up. Right now, it's set so that it's really kind of like they are the intro to like, oh, there are also good aliens. So it's sort of like the player has to work to piss them off. And there's kind of 2 kinds of disposition for the aliens. There's static disposition, which is affected by your choices. So like if you return their crew, like, so if you go on that mission and rescue their crew and bring them back, that'll give you a permanent plus X to their disposition towards you. And then there's dynamic disposition, where it's like, if you wing them in a fight,
they might dislike you for a little bit, but it'll go back to normal if you don't shoot them anymore.
Right, exactly. And that's tactical too, because I don't know if you ever encountered this, but you can like get like the Chittick, if you can get the Chittick to wing the Aluquo a couple times, the Aluquo will just clear them out of the system. They'll just like, all right, enough of you guys. So and I think that's kind of a fun thing too.
I
Is
got
the
them to
Aluquo the
friendly, so
traitor?
they helped me out in battle.
Yeah,
that was cool.
That's the trader guys, right?
yeah, the trader
Aluquo.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
squid
I
guys.
did stuff for them and it made them happy. So when I got attacked, they just jumped in and fired. And
Nice.
it's just it was very nice.
they're a little OP, but it's kind of hard to like. They only show up occasionally, so I'm not too worried about them, throwing the game out of balance.
Yeah,
Well, I
because
was
it could be
pretty powerful on my own, but still, it was just nice that they were there for the extra firepower.
Yeah, and it's a thing too of like, if I do kill one of those guys, and it should be a thing that I probably shouldn't be able to do. Like I would make them scary and OP. Like don't dare, don't dare to deal with these guys. Like maybe they hit
Right.
you up with a tractor beam and just pick you apart. But if you manage to knock a piece off of them, they're like a loot pinata, right? Because it's a merchant ship. It's got all that cargo.
Right. That's a good idea.
So there's a hell of a temptation to do that. But then again, you're going to anger all the traders, and then you're not going to maybe whether they trade with you or not, or you just get like crappy prices or what, I mean, I guess it depends.
Or
on
maybe
how
they
much you
call
pick
in
on
bounty hunters on you.
Yeah.
that too.
Their pricing is disposition dependent. So if they don't like you, you are gonna get crappy prices. I do like the idea of sort of it being a player choice, being like the Aluko will have something really awesome, so that if you do kill one, you're gonna get maybe like a tech or a research thing that you otherwise wouldn't get. But then they're gonna be super pissed off at you until that like long period of time until they forget because they've got long memories.
Well, those
But I
guys
like
would
that.
be good. Those guys would be good, like neutral quest givers too. They'd
Yeah.
just be like, hey, we like artifacts. So if you find any cool artifacts, make sure to bring them to us because we'll trade you something nice for them, right? And they might give you a hint, like, hey, we heard there was something over here, but then that happens to be guarded by something kind of nasty or whatever. And I do hope for space monsters at some point. That would be very cool. Not too many, but scary ones. A few.
And not space squids, because that's been done before.
Yeah, no shrimp, nothing pink in space. That's we've got a thing. Well, one of the games that Brian really loves is Jumpgate, and all the enemies that you fight are pink space shrimp. And then there is another game a guy made a bunch of pink space shrimp, and I was just like, oh my god, no more space shrimp.
Yeah, I thought.
What game do you think does? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Brian.
No, I thought you were going to bring up Starhammer, not Jumpgate. What were you going to ask?
Yeah, Starhammer 2.
What were you?
Well, I was going to ask, like, what's an example of, like, what? I don't recall having played a game where there were like good space monsters. Do you mean monsters that are actually literally out in space? Like,
yeah, like some tentacled horror.
Yeah, there aren't
out there.
There aren't a lot of space games that depict actual like indigenous space life. You know what I mean? Like the two we mentioned, and maybe Distant Worlds, I think, does it.
Well,
They definitely
there's
do it.
also Shortest Trip to Earth, which has
Oh, that's right.
it has space fauna in it, and you can encounter them and listen to their song, and then that gives you a fate point, which you can spend in a future run to get more stuff to start off that run. Or you can just hunt them because that's an option too.
Well, okay, so the like in Dungeons and Dragons, the mimic, right? It's a treasure chest, and then it tries to eat you. Well, you could have a derelict, and you get too close, and then it explodes into tentacles and tries to like lasso your ship and drag you into the to the toothy maw. That it was a derelict, but it's a bit infested. Or if you went like you have those asteroid fields you go in and mine. Well, maybe there's one. Those aren't really asteroids. Those are kind of eggs. And when you start popping them, then things come out and attach. Well, not even. Well, if I guess if you kill enough of the little ones,
it could be eggs
mom
where
might
like
come out.
it could be like something where you pop one and then like some nasty little thing comes out and attaches to your ship. That'd be cool. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
idea.
and I was thinking, well, the way because those things are usually like orbiting a star or something, and you take damage if you get too close to the star, or do you have to actually bump it and then you're just insta killed?
Currently, there's no star damage except for the pulsar. But I
okay,
have been thinking
I-
about adding damage to the pulse to the regular stars.
Okay, so let's say that the other stars do a little bit of damage, right? And like the closer you get, the worse it gets. So you could scorch up the side of your ship that's facing it.
Mhm.
But if you get those little parasites stuck on your ship, that's the way to
Oh,
get
you
rid
can
of
clear
them.
them off.
Yeah, just drive through
Burn
the
'em off.
corona of the sun,
Like
burn them off. You're going
like
to take a little
barnacles.
damage.
Yeah, like space barnacles. Yeah.
Actually, I would like to see crew die from radiation damage if you spend too much time next to a star, because that would.
Oh, that'd be.
It
neat.
doesn't necessarily have to damage the ship per se, but you can start having crew die off because
Yeah,
you're too
maybe-
close.
And maybe that's another tech, is because you get the hazardous landing technologies and stuff.
Right.
Well, maybe coming with that, or as a separate thing, you also get the ability to be a little closer to certain kinds of stars without, because you could have a planet that just approaching the damn thing, it's in some kind of a nasty field, and you're going to just get crew that kind of die.
Yeah, it makes a lot of
so-
sense because like the current star system, where you need the envirotech to land, has that sort of near supernova star, and so it has this sort of hot theme. And I the only thing keeping me right now from adding star damage is that first I have to add to the AI sort of an awareness, like, all right, steer away, like, because it doesn't look good if the enemy just kills themselves. They have to have some negative penalty for it. Like, they can occasionally damage themselves, but you want to make sure that, like, just while they're patrolling the system, they're smart enough not to go into the sun.
Yeah. Yeah, and speaking of the suns and the planets, more so the planets than anything, those planets are gorgeous. It's
Thank you.
Are you drawing those, or did you get them somewhere? Or what?
It's actually this. It took quite a lot of work. It's actually a shader that I created that for most of the planets. And I don't know if this is like too technically boring for your listeners, but
No, we love technical stuff. Just
okay.
go,
All right.
just
So
go.
basically, yeah. So for most of the planets, what it is there'll be sort of a prototype planet, and that prototype planet will define several textures and a spectrum for each texture, and then do a seed, and then it will do a diamond square algorithm to create this kind of heat map. And then using that heat map, it will blend the three textures together in sort of like a high terrain, low terrain, mid terrain. And then for each one of those terrain levels, it'll say, all right, shift the color in this spectrum range. And then for the terrestrial planets, then do another water pass or water level.
Like a cloud layer or something.
Yeah, the clouds are kind of like a visibility variation on two different textures. So it's it's sort of like maybe there's like a dozen prototype stars, or not stars, planets, and then just a seed number will vary them, each individual one, massively.
Oh, cool.
Look great. They really do.
Thanks.
And speaking of clouds, some nebula stuff in there would be cool. Like I don't know if something that you're basically blind in there. It kills your sensors down to a really small radius, and then you have to actually hunt around.
The nebulas do that. They really nerf your
Yeah, they do.
They
that.
nerf your movement.
Yeah,
I've noticed that.
They also nerf your visibility. Like, they cut it down. Like it varies by distance to the center, but it's almost by a factor of like 4 or more when you're close to the center of one of those.
Oh, cool.
Right.
But they don't inflict any damage or anything, though, right? It's just a
Not
visibility
other
thing.
than the one with the lightning. That one.
Okay.
That one does, but the other.
I must have avoided that one successfully because I
Yeah, I really like the nebulas. I did want to ask something. It's a small thing I noticed, but your little, like when you send your little rover down when you discover an anomaly, does it fly a little bit faster than your ship? So even if you start moving, it'll just always catch up with you no matter what?
Yeah. That was just kind of like, I didn't want to make people have to wait.
That's awesome. That's so awesome.
I found that out the nice way. Is I started moving away from a planet because I was trying to evade someone who was shooting at me, and my rover did actually catch up. So, yeah, that was a very nice touch. Yeah, but it's a good quality of life thing.
Yeah, so it would be interesting though if that rover is damageable, And if it happens to get shot because you were screwing around and there was enemies around, you lose like 4 or 5 crew, just pop. So maybe you wouldn't want to just trail it behind you while it tries to catch up if you're
or
taking
maybe
fire.
it just wouldn't take off until you clear all the enemies. I think that would be better because it'd be so annoying to lose that rover. Like, so annoying.
Well, you get another rover, but you would lose. It's the risk reward
you'd have to
thing
fly all
of
the way
being
back,
stealthy.
though. You'd have to fly all the way back, and I don't know. This game does such a good job of not being annoying. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that it getting hit and just having a loss of crew from it getting hit is enough of a penalty right there.
Yeah.
Because losing 3 or 4 crew just because it gets shot, you can send it back down again. You don't have to head back to your station and repair it, but losing 3 or 4 crew is probably going to stop you if you only have maybe 12 at that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could see missions too where, let's say there's a derelict or something in space, right? A station that you find and it's abandoned, and you send crew over there, and then it's going to take them, like there's a timer, right? It's going to take us this long, and then enemies show up, and then you have to defend that for long enough for them to get stuff done. Or you could hit the button and just say get out, right? But it almost like a wave defense thing could get built into there, because it's like, okay, some cheap enemies show up and you kill them, and then the next wave comes and they're a little tougher, and it's a risk reward thing again, kind of like that tower mission, right? Where it's like, okay, the tower's a little unstable, which room do you want to check? And then you're looting the tower to the point where it's just like, okay, do I want to press my luck and try to get like one more thing out of here? So it could be a thing like that, but there's actually, stronger and stronger enemies that come, or the space monsters or something, right?
Right. So like the action version of the tower, where you're actually like, rather than just making choices, you're actually having to fight something.
Right. And it's just like, how long do I want to try to risk this? And it's not necessarily, can I protect my own ship, but can I keep that station from getting damaged? Because if the station takes a beating, then the crew inside could die. And I could lose dudes right there. And then I could just hit a recall button and just say, all right, get out. And then they come.
And they'll
right
leave
back
with whatever they have, and that's maybe determining your reward level for that defense of it. So maybe if you can manage to hold out long enough, they can get everything, or you can lose all the crew with everyone inside. It's all or nothing.
Yeah, that was a little bit the tower mission. Like you can, if you press your luck on the tower mission, you get the research points, because the idea is that they beamed that back to you, but any resources you lose.
Yeah, I mean the math that I would do with it is the amount of time that you're there per crewman that's there, right? And maybe you make a choice, how many people do I send? Right. So it's how many people are in there times how many minutes have I been there is how many units of whatever loot they get out with. But if people get killed while they're in there, then that's that many people that can't carry stuff, so it's reduced by that multiple.
So, and then there's the other factor, which is as you're taking damage and losing crew on the ship, your repairability, your ability to mitigate that damage and get your modules back up and running, that's reduced too.
Right.
So there's definitely a risk reward in that idea.
Yeah, I mean, it would take a little doing to figure out what the exactly right ratio is. But the nice thing is, if you do get like a wave based thing going in there, that actually could be like a simulation thing. It's like, hey, I upgraded my ship. All right, I want to see how this does. Or even just outside the game, right? Would just be like, hey, man, I'm gonna build this ship, and then let's just see how long I can last against this for score or something.
Right.
But yeah.
That's a topic that's come up with on the Discord, is just sort of what besides. So, obviously I'm focusing on content for the early access, but once it's in early access, the players are sort of, it's kind of currently not a super long game. There's a lot of content in it, but it's, you can complete it all in like 4 or 5 hours or so. And, at my rate of progress, it takes me about 60 hours of development, if I'm focusing purely on content, to produce an hour of content in the game, and to try to figure out what are some ways to give players who've finished the game something to do, so that they're still like value in it until the final game is finished. One of the ideas that's come up is to spend some time on modding tools so people can create their own mini scenarios. Now, it's going to take a while to be really a full, like you're not going to be able to create the whole game with the initial modding tools, but just be able to like design a few sectors, create your own planets, use the planet shuffle button to like see what kind of pretty planets you can create, and then load them up with enemies. Drop like, oh, let's see if I put in 3 hives and a Sentinel, what kind of ship can beat that? That wouldn't be like an enormous challenge, and I think might be something that people enjoy. So that's something that I'm talking about with the community.
Yeah. I'll take this offline with you about that, because I've got a pretty strong idea about how you could do that. Just
awesome.
To make your own life easier as you make content for the thing, because rather than have to script individual encounters and stuff, then there's a system that you could kind of use that it's like the old X-Wing TIE fighter kind of mission making thing. And it's basically a condition based thing. It's like this ship spawns, its goal is that, and it departs whenever condition,
cool.
but it was all drop down stuff. And I can show you the program. It'll give you some ideas.
Yeah.
I like the whole deal where if you make it really easy to just add content in, quests or the whatever, and like had an editor where you can build solar systems and stuff, you could probably stamp out content way faster. But it would be the initial investment of creating the tool, which might take about as long as making the game. So, that the amount of content you're going to put in, I guess, determines like how much time you want to waste on that.
Yeah, I think you're right, but I also think that because of some early decisions I made, that it might not be as big as if I had made different decisions. Like I am able to right now, I have to create all the sectors in Unity and all the missions using a node editor that I created. But some of these, it would be a lot of work to move to a standalone editor, but possibly to the point of justifying it even for my own development, just shortening my development cycle.
Yeah, because I think it's like that's where I think a lot of people get burnt out, right? Is they get the engine figured out, and then it's just like, oh God, now I got to make like 20 hours of content in this thing, and like how much stuff can be hand created and yet still have a lot of variety and that, or you end up with the other side of the indie coin where it's like, this is all RNGesus, the entire game is just procedural, and then people are like, well, where's the narrative? That it doesn't put a carrot on a stick unless you just make it like a Diablo style loot grind,
right? Which
isn't good either. I do think if you wanted to put like a side thing in this, this would make a hell of just a banging asteroids game. If it was an arcade thing where you just throw some enemies in and you got some big asteroids and they break into little asteroids, and if they hit you, you die. Well, it'd bust pieces off your ship, right? So it would be like, okay, you have this many points to spend on techs and like resources for the ship. Right. So, or even tech could do it. Like, it's like, okay, well, I spend down the tech tree to where I have a 16 brick ship or a 12. And if I only buy the 12 piece ship, then I have stuff to spend on missiles or something. So you'd have to find like the right number for people, but it's basically like you start with a pool of research points, blow that in the tech tree, and then build the best thing you can out of it. And then try to survive the gauntlet thing. And, and just make it like an endless asteroids thing. Kill all the asteroids, you get score, more enemies show up. It almost like the wave-based thing that I was saying. So I guess if you build that mission, then this is just an extension of that, and half the work's already done. But I think, to throw some value in there of, well, first off, if people want to kind of understand what the techs do before... I don't know if you want to do that or not, though, because part of the fun is the discovery, right? It's like, I wonder what that does. Well, I'm going to have to blow some points and find out, at least on the first playthrough. So maybe make the people play it a while, or maybe you can only use text that you've actually unlocked in the main story.
Right.
And then you can use them in the arcade thing and force people to kind of like, okay, you got to discover this organically, and then you can play with it in the playground.
So this would be sort of like in sort of outside of the campaign mode, having like a survival wave mode.
Yeah.
Maybe you could just be accessed from the main menu as this is the mode you want to play in.
Exactly.
Yeah, and in fact, if you want to make fake wireframe graphics instead of the nice, pretty detailed ship stuff, because I kind of like that radar map that you got. But if you just did the whole thing in like those bright pastel, like wireframe things, I don't know how hard that would be to do to just outline your existing stuff with that and then kind of make it invisible. So it would just look like a wireframe or something. Some kind of shader might do it. But anyway, yeah. So it'd basically be like, okay, I got my neon pink wireframe ship and I'm shooting, like glowy bullets and stuff. It'd look like a sick Miami Vice video game or something. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, I really like that, the kind of retro look of the map, even though it's like clean and the icons are really good and stuff, but like the color scheme is kind of like a retro 80s festival going on. And I like that. So yeah, I don't know. You could make something pretty dope in there, but it would be just like a for funsies thing. And like, well, okay, I beat the game. What do I do? Depends on how much random you throw in there, right? Whether it's super replayable or not. But hey, there's always this other thing. So, online leaderboard or whatever you want to do with that.
Maybe you could make it like a sector jumping thing like we were talking about earlier. Like you jump to a system and it's one planet and you have an adventure there and whatever happens determines where you go next. And then you jump to the next one and you have another adventure there. And
yeah, it's kind of FTL-ish, right?
A little FTL-ish with real-time combat in the systems. So
yeah,
that could be like another...
Well, yeah, like once the whole game's built, like if you wanted to put like and here's the roguelike DLC for, like $5 more, you can now play it as a roguelike or something. I don't know. But yeah, get this done first and then we'll worry about that. But, I try to think of like, once you've got the effort in to develop a lot of stuff and you've got all the assets and the systems that work nice together, like what else can you do with that without a ton of effort? It's like, I don't want to make a whole nother game, but I could add like a whole nother game's worth of stuff in here for very cheap. So.
Yeah. Do you have any plans for any kind of post-release expansions or DLC or anything like that? Or is that way too far ahead for you to even think about right now?
I think it's still pretty far ahead because I'm expecting a fairly long early access period. Because I kind of have it's going to obviously depend on how successful it is, but I have a lot of story and content that I want to be able to tell. But I certainly, considering the possibility of having like a DLC as like, added content, but I definitely think that there's a lot of life that can be added to the game by giving modders tools to like, initially just play with creating pretty star systems and then pretty star systems with enemies and then enemies that have missions and then create your own anomalies. And then, each one of these things takes a bit of work, but the more that you add, then people will be able to use like the I forget what the Steamworks workshop.
Steam Workshop.
Yeah. Share their stuff, because like looking at the successful indie games in this space, modding is is sort of a frequent theme between this, like I don't know how you say it. Avorion, is that
Avorion, sure.
Yeah, I know that's gotten like huge life out of the fact that it's got support from the modding community.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, so in if I took a ship design, right, and I don't know how big do you plan on these ships getting? Was it like 32 blocks or something? Was the biggest one?
I think
it was like the Galaxy.
I don't know if the tech is limited. You can get up to 6. I like in dev mode. I've played with ones that are 60 to 70.
Oh my god,
that's sizable. It's big. So what I was thinking though is if you had the ability to, like, I designed a ship and then uploaded it, right?
Oh,
And
definitely.
I don't, is it within your scope to color the blocks and stuff too? Like if I build a ship, then I can color the individual things.
Potentially, that's kind of a little bit of a, I don't know what the early access equivalent of stretch goal is, but yeah. So I struggled for a long time on the modules look. I think they look okay. I think they look maybe even good because like you don't see them very large. They're pretty small
Right.
on the screen, so they look pretty good. Sometimes they look only okay. I think if you're in the shipyard. And I wanted to outsource. I tried a couple different designers to try, and nobody was able to really deliver something that I felt worked.
Hmm.
But I would like to come back to it and maybe even do something where there's a custom shader where you sort of have, maybe like 50 core module models and then a shader for each that knows like, okay, this is a Starcom ship. Here's the shader we want to use.
Yeah.
This is a sword. Use this one.
Because I was just thinking, like, do I want to make it red, blue, gray, green, on a per block basis, if that's a thing that's easily done? Because then you just tint the thing that's already there.
Right.
But that way I could make a ship, I could color it, put some strange design to it so it looks interesting, upload that. But then other people, whenever they're making missions, could actually download my ship and plug that in as NPC ships in their missions.
Yeah. I think
so you can make your own enemies.
Doable if I went the distance and create like sort of a shader where you could customize the colors.
Even without that though, it would be a thing that would be really nice. Like I can make my own enemies in here, and that way it's like you have a palette of however many enemies that are in the thing. But if I wanted to make my own stuff and stick it in there and just be like,
definitely 100%
run through my system and see if you can survive to the end of this.
Yeah, the enemies in the game, I make those using in the station shipyard. There's like a cheat code I put in, and then I'm just designing a Chittick ship. So would be definitely doable.
Okay, yeah, that's excellent because it's just the thing of like endless content from users.
Right. Because
Is there a way to save blueprints at the moment, or is that going to be added?
There is not. That is like definitely on the
Thank
roadmap.
God. Thank God.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there's to be a way to save blueprints. Right now, it's more just kind of I need to figure out what the base blueprints are, but then you'll be able to save them. And I think that'll probably be one of the first things that you're able to share with other users. And it might even be just before there's the Steamworks integration, just like Control-C, Control-V type. It'll give you the JSON for it, and then while you're in the shipyard, if you hit Control-V, it'll just paste it in.
Okay. That would be cool too. At least until you get.
Well, I mean that sounds like templates then, pretty much, because you could, in a sense, have a series of templates to choose from based on the tech you've unlocked, and maybe you're looking at the ship editor, and maybe on the left side you've got a list of those templates that you've already saved or some defaults that come in. You can select one of those if you have the tech already unlocked, and it'll just throw that down. And then you can either edit from there or just use it as is.
Yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't sound too bad. Because I was playing, I was like, I really like this design. What if it gets blown up? Oh no.
And the nice thing about it is when you edit, you don't lose any resources by removing stuff.
I really like that. I really like that.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I felt like that was. I wanted the thing, so I initially started with you can blow things off of ships because that's fun because it's nice to have ships blow up like piñatas. But then I realized very quickly that it's not fun for your ship to blow up like a piñata because you lose that thing that you spent so long getting the resources for, and then it just didn't feel fun. So I just decided that one of the technologies that Starcom has that nobody else has figured out is how to keep your ship from breaking apart.
Oh.
So you can lose those pieces, you get back to the station, and it's repaired back at full because, well, you've got that 3D printing technology that nobody else has for some reason.
Right.
So there's a point that the module will get damaged to where it won't be able to be repaired in space. I'll have to take it back to dock.
That doesn't happen. That was kind of an original playtest thing, but now it will get damaged to the point that it isn't doing anything. But if you have crew, while you're in space, they will fix it to a usable point. It'll sort of be less on fire and then you'll be able to use it again.
I did notice
that's
that
cool.
there was research that would allow it to work if it was 50% damage instead of
Yes, right.
It changes the buffer at which it could still be fully functional even if it's already damaged.
Yeah. I don't know if you've probably noticed that, like, if you're getting once, like, this is sort of a balance problem in a lot of games that, like, once you start getting damaged, then you're worse off, and like you're going slower, so now you can't escape easily, and then it becomes this sort of spiral of death. And so I felt that in order to mitigate that a little bit, having a tech where you can be like, okay, things get worse as I'm more on fire, but they don't get that much worse.
It's sort of like the A10 idea of having triple redundancies in everything.
Yeah.
You only had
oh.
one set of redundancies. Now you have three.
Right.
We have another question from McKecht over at YouTube. I'm not sure. Okay. Does the game have the ability to add a ground game like some other DOS games? Like Alien Ruin type story? Don't you have that? I'm a little confused by the question.
I haven't played that game. I'm guessing that he's probably asking about sort of like more planetary interaction, like sort of like landing and actually having something beyond the anomaly interactions. And I think that's probably not on the radar, because I think the variation in the anomalies that it skips over kind of the awkward lander puzzles that we were talking about. But if I'm understanding the question correctly, it would be sort of adding some kind of ground combat in between, like as sort of like a second type of mini game. Not currently on the road.
That's fair. That's a good answer.
Because part of it's I'm a single developer. It's I have to decide what's reasonable scope and not. Otherwise, I become the Star Citizen of top-down space games.
Yeah. So will you be including the ability to cook and fish in the game? Because
I want a fish. I want a fish tank. I want a fish tank.
Procedural fried eggs. There's been about $5 million.
I also fully expect face tracking. I have to have face tracking. Sorry.
I mean, the nice things about the anomalies is that I could actually. Yep, there's a fishing mini game. You go to the thing and choose to fish or not fish.
That is the question.
Oh man.
No, it's just the fried egg in Star Citizen just blows my mind.
I have not heard about this. What is this?
Oh, there's ice now.
Did
you hear about?
Go ahead. Oh yeah, I saw that where he's got the drink and it's like
procedurally generated ice.
Oh god. Yeah. No, they put in a cooking thing. It was in the early spring. They showed it off, and they were like, "Oh, well, here's how you make pork and beans, right?" And here's like a bunch of different varieties of that, and they were showing it in the software, like how it actually creates it, right? So it's like, well, here's 10 different fried eggs, like it's different every time. Isn't that amazing? And yeah, I'm not kidding.
And
I'll send you a link.
That's why I bought into Star Citizen back in 2012, so I could be a fucking line cook on a goddamn space station. That's what I wanted to do.
You got to earn that ship somehow.
I mean, I really want to see that game. I really want to play it.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I worry that they need to focus. They need to say like this is in scope and this is what people really want.
About 4 years ago, that would have been a good idea. And so, one of the things that came up in CitizenCon, they were talking about how the last 18 months they've done this massive recode of the game because seriously, they had to go back and like rewrite a giant amount of the game because what happened was the game would load and people were talking about like the terrible performance and the giant load times and stuff. And if you had like excuse me, if you had like a giant pile of RAM, then you could play it. But if you didn't, well, what was going on is it was loading all the assets in the game into RAM. So like everything that was anywhere in the game
the entire
could possibly be seen had to get loaded in. Yeah. And then it all like cached out into like page file or something, I guess. So yeah, it was just like an incredibly long load process because it loaded every asset and then you could play the game. And so they went back and they said, okay, well, we need to chunk this so that it's only loading what's applicable to your current locale. And that apparently took 18 months to go back and make it chunk things instead of just load everything.
Wow.
Yeah, we're very, a lot of us are really disillusioned with that whole thing, and you're absolutely right. There's no focus. But the problem is they're being rewarded for this lack of focus. Like CitizenCon brought them in almost $1 million.
I mean, I can understand I understand the dream that like wanting. I mean, you see like the video demos, and I get excited. You know, it looks really cool, and I still think that they can scope it down and deliver a really fantastic space game, and they can even include some of the ground stuff as well. But I do think they need to decide what's important for their players. And I haven't been following it that closely. Like the last, I didn't see the.
Just don't.
Okay.
You're just going to be disappointed. So let me ask you kind of a question that's along those lines. You said you're a solo developer. You're.
Yep.
How do you maintain focus and motivation when it's just you? Like, I'm sure there are days where you're like, I don't want to do this. So how do you how do you keep pushing forward?
It's I guess practice. It's just every day I feel like, so one, I have a, task tracking system that measures velocity. And so like, if I'm slacking for a week, it like, I can see it. It shows me like,
oh really?
Yeah.
What is that? That sounds fascinating.
It's called, Pivotal Tracker. And so it like monitors average velocity. And so like when I'm, every day, like, it's not doing on a daily basis, but like it does it on sort of sprints. But so like every day I get up and I say like, okay, what needs to be done for the next milestone? And I have these all sort of prioritized. And if I really don't have the motivation to do one of like a particular thing, I still have to work. I still have to do something, like, even if it's reaching out to maybe like media, or maybe it's, I can always create an anomaly. It's so fun to create an anomaly. Favorite thing. So like if I'm totally not motivated to do anything else, I can be like, all right, I'm going to open up View, create a pretty picture, and then write something to describe what happens with that one. But I just basically make myself just work, even if I'm not motivated to. So it is hard sometimes, but there's not someone there making me work, so I kind of have to do it myself.
This pivotal tracker thing looks kind of fascinating.
Yeah, the neat thing is I can go back and look, and a month ago, I it has the entire record of everything I've done since I even started, like literally the second entry. Let me see if I can find it. The first entry I think is like download Unity, and the second one is Unity Space Tutorial.
Oh,
and
wow.
So, and I should let me back up a little bit. I did say like I'm a solo developer, but I want to give shout outs to I have a couple of contractors that have done some great work. Hardy Fowler did the character art, which I think is fantastic, and Moritz Sebastian is a German composer who's done the music for it. So I don't want to claim all the credit because there are some other talented people that have work in the game.
Right, like a lot of people, when they're solo developers, they have people that help them with art, and stuff like that. But it's still like, even when you're doing a thing you love, it's hard to sometimes find.
Oh, it is. It's so hard.
Yeah, like sometimes with Space Game Junkie, I'll just be like, nope, I'm taking a week off. I need a break, even if you love it.
That reminds me of a question I wanted to throw at you. When did you start the podcast?
The site the site started in 2011, and then the podcast was 2013. Yeah, I think February 2013 is when we started the podcast.
Were you super nervous, like when you were doing your first podcast?
Hell yes.
Okay.
Oh my God,
was-
yes.
He wasn't bad on the first one. It was the second one. That's the one.
No, it was
Because we had
it was
Chris
the fourth.
Robert-
That was
or
the
it was the
fourth
fourth
one.
one.
That was the fourth one,
Yeah.
and I had a coughing fit. I could barely talk, and I couldn't mute my mic. I don't remember, for some reason I couldn't mute the mic, so I had to like take my headphones off and put them on the other side of the room and cover the mic with my hand every time I cough, which was like every 30 seconds. That was a rough podcast.
Yeah, but it was like we had an indie dev on, and then out of nowhere, Chris Roberts. Hey, I
Wow,
wanna be on
that's
the
got a
show.
big-
And it
that's a
was
big-
like,
We'll never have him on
Yeah.
again. Don't worry, we will never have him.
well, I would absolutely have him on,
Oh,
but I
no.
don't think his handlers allow him
No.
to speak anymore.
If they're smart, if they're,
Yeah.
Yeah,
By
this
the
is-
way, I sent you a PM that's got 7 seconds of $1 million fried egg.
Oh, nice. Got that.
But yeah, we've been doing this for a bit over. God, it's gonna be 6 years soon, huh? Yeah.
Congratulations.
Coming
Yeah,
up.
I mean, you've been doing a lot. I mean, what are you, 250, 260 now?
Yeah, this is 265.
Wow.
This one.
Congratulations.
Thank
And I
you.
know I the reason I wanted to ask that question is it's just it can be so scary to put something out there to just
Oh, it's terrifying.
make yourself vulnerable and just
Oh,
show
it's
people
terrifying.
like, okay,
Yeah, it's utterly terrifying to not only be creative, but and I don't feel like I'm very creative with this. This is the easiest type of creativity. You're making a game. We are asking you about the thing you are making. We are not.
as somebody who's afraid of public speaking, like your job sounds so intimidating to me. Just like having someone different on every week and having to talk
Oh.
to them and
It's
and
still
entertain
kind
your
of
audience.
it's still nerve wracking. It's still terrifying. Like when we had Greg Johnson on just a few weeks ago, I was so terrified the whole time.
That was a great show. I mean, you certainly didn't sound nervous, and it was there was a lot of really interesting stuff in that. I mentioned while we were in the green room, lovely green room, by the way.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed all the brown M&Ms.
Yeah, just
we
yeah,
made sure that we only had brown. 'Cause
Right.
That was on your rider. So we made
couch
sure.
is really nice.
The secret is that you have to cultivate an awareness of quality while simultaneously learning the art of not giving a shit. And then it frees you, but you still make a good thing.
Yeah, it's great. Like the first half of that Starflight, I learned a lot of stuff because I don't know, I don't even know if we talked about this, but kind of the core inspiration for the Flash game, and now of course this was Starflight, which I played as a kid, and kind of have always wanted to make a game in that vein, just where you're Captain Kirk or Picard or Janeway or Adama or whoever. You're just out there exploring space and discovering new interesting things. And that was, a game that, and, Star Control 2 as well. I didn't play as much of that one, but those two games kind of have been something that have been so rare to see, even in the decades since, that I was just like, that's what the brass ring is to me.
I think they're hard to do well. Like there were some attempts, like there was Protostar and there was a few others, and it's tough to do well. And if you don't do it well, you're easily forgotten, and rightly so.
Yeah.
I think.
Or remembered for being terrible.
Yeah.
Which is the other way it goes.
Like the game we brought up earlier, which I don't want to mention again because we've already thrown enough shade. But
it is. I don't care if people remember me for being great or being terrible, as long as they remember me. Right?
it's fair.
And that's why my game will be coming out on Steam shortly.
Oh no.
So
What is it?
I haven't decided yet. But I just need to find some assets and flip them, and then put a cool name on it.
Gonna buy a $30 thing in the Unity store, change a few colors,
That's it.
put it on.
Make
sell
some
it for-
JSON scripting to make some eggs and
Yeah.
procedurally generate them.
Sell it for $1. Then if you sell 30 copies, you made your money back.
Yeah, I'll call it Eggs versus Zombies because there's enough zombie assets. I can
Zombies
get
is
by.
the enemy du jour.
Yeah, well, zombies are easy, right? Because first off, you don't offend anybody shooting zombies.
That's true.
Because there's no
Everyone likes
political
shooting
question
zombies.
that will come
Everyone
up about that. Yeah, and also your AI doesn't have to be too good because all they do is just kind of shamble directly toward you.
Dude,
you know.
one speed came up with it. Flipping some eggs on Steam, a virtual reality egg cooking flipping game. There you go.
Call it egg asset flipper, and flip the eggs. Oh yes,
Egg Citizen.
This game has written itself.
Egg Citizen. There you go.
The chef is a zombie.
Space Station line cook. There you go. I'm gonna make a game where you're just a chef in a diner on a space station. That's your only job, and you get to see all these ships come in and out while you make them food.
But only if it's the one in Spaceballs.
See, this reminds me of the game that shouldn't have been good and yet was amazing.
What's that?
Is Conflicts, where the game about space chickens, where it's basically like flicking spaceships.
Yeah, that game was great, except
you stretch it back. It's like the idea is so stupid that it was masterful.
I found it got tedious after a while because you had to do you couldn't like group maneuver. You had to like move every individual, and that got tedious after a while for me.
Yeah, but whenever it got harder, because you had to do it in real time.
Yeah.
Right? So as I remember, so there was a lot of click and flick stuff that was going. Yeah, you could call it a click and flick adventure. It'd be like Booger Space, a click and flick adventure.
Oh my god. Anyway, so let's rewind a little bit. So this is not the first Starcom game. We really haven't talked about the history. It's kind of a franchise now. So let's go back to the beginning. You made a Flash game. Let's start there.
Yeah, so this is 2008 or 9. I made it a Flash game that was like a tower defense space game, and that was pretty popular. You know, it was fairly addictive. And then that kind of gave me the experience and confidence to go for something bigger. I wanted at that point I wanted to make a space exploration, Star Trek simulator, but I felt like realistically as a second game that was too ambitious. So I made something that was more of a sort of an asteroids game with a light plot. I think it was probably like an hour or two long. And it people liked it. You know, it got like a pretty big following. I would have people like email me like a year or two later being like, man, I love this game. Are you going to work on something else? And one thought I had, when I made it, I was like, oh, I should put in this was like way before like social media or anything or even marketing was on my radar. But I was like, it would be interesting to see how many people play it. So I'll put a little call to a database, a little ping a web page, and I'll get to know anytime anyone starts a new game. And it ended up with like millions of plays.
Wow.
And even now, like, even though like I can't even run Flash, like my computer won't let me run Flash. It gets like 10,000 new games a month. And I'll like look at the refer codes and like, they're just all over the world. People like, and I'll find like, and then I'll Google it and I'll be like, someone in like Russia has just discovered this game, or like it's got like 500 plays last month from some website in China that I can't even read. And I think it's simple. It's very similar to, it's like the simplest possible version of this game in Flash, but it's like blowing up ships, getting a better, getting, the ability to upgrade your ship a little bit, jumping to another star system and upgrading that ship. And that resonate. I guess it resonated, and people were like, I love that the feeling of that. And then it was from that I was like, oh, maybe there's a market for like a real product version as opposed to just like a web game. And then so in 2014, I decided to like add an email sign up form to the Flash game, and people said, yes, please make this game. And I started on it in Unity, and I went through a couple iterations in like over like 6 months, but it just didn't gel. It was just I wasn't finding the fun. And so I took a break from it for like a year and a half. And then about 2 years ago, I picked it up again. And after a few iterations, I was like, oh, okay, I think I've figured out what the parts that weren't working are, what the core parts, where the core mechanics that were fun are. And I started iterating over that. And then by, I think midsummer of this year, it was sort of like, to the point where I was like, yes, this is coming together. I want to start showing it to people and doing closed betas. And I probably should have started closed betas earlier just to make sure that I wasn't making any drastically bad design decisions. But I guess I lucked out. The first round was like, yes, there are some things that were definitely not working, but the core was good. People were like, yes, I like what you're doing with this. Please show me more.
That is quite a story, and it's great. I mean, that is really awesome. That's amazing that people are still finding that Flash game.
I know it's kind of crazy. I was like, what browser are you running?
What are they playing it on? Yeah. You can potentially download older versions of browsers and stuff for compatibility reasons. Like I do that sometimes.
And you can get Firefox to run Flash, but it won't out of the box. Like if you download it and go to a Flash page, it'll just show, I don't know, blank square or something. So it's got to be people who are like love Flash games and have just decided like I am gonna keep backporting my browser or keep doing whatever the hoops it needs to do, because there's a huge number of Flash games that are going to disappear forever in about 2 years, because Flash is going to be completely deprecated. And there's like a million games out there that, and a lot of them are really good. There's a lot of really great designs and games that we're sadly gonna lose to history. We're not even gonna have probably like, people won't even download the copies and we'll lose them.
I would hope maybe someone needs to do that. If you're listening, start like a repository of Flash games. Like you've seen what the Internet Archive has been doing, right?
Yeah.
They've got like all kinds of DOS and Amiga and Atari games and stuff all running through emulation. And
someone needs to like start working on the ROM emulator for Flash, but the one that also doesn't run viruses.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
That'd be nice.
Poor Flash. poor Flash.
Well, that's a whole new market for GOG, right? It'll be like good old Flash games.
Oh, jeez. I don't know if I would spend money on a potential virus. That's all. I'm sorry. That's all I think of now when I think of Flash. Is just what a vulnerable kind of mess it can be. I learned. I hate to say it. I learned to hate Flash early because for SEO purposes, it's terrible. It is.
Oh, of course.
It is the worst. And
right.
Back when I started in SEO, everyone was using Flash for their websites because it was the thing. It was the it's all interactive and neat, and JavaScript doesn't exist yet or whatever. So
it's terrible for that. But one thing that was amazing for it is it was kind of a golden age for game design, because it was a thing where you could come up with just an idea and have people all over the world try it out instantly. Like just if you can get them to go to a web page, they could play the game and get and you would get immediate feedback as to whether or not your design was good or not. And that's kind of like, the only era in which, and it was like huge. People would play games all the time. Like there's a huge market for it. So you could very easily create a game and get like 1 million players, even if you weren't a studio or anything. And I think that was fantastic for game developers and people who wanted to learn design, because you had this resource and this way to access a huge audience. But it has a lot of problems.
Guys, can you do something for me? Can you try and go to YouTube? Because I can't.
Yeah, it's down.
YouTube's down. Okay.
Killed it. Mission accomplished.
All right.
Wow.
Well, good
I
job,
think we
everyone.
can blame the podcast. Yeah,
good job, everyone.
So
we broke YouTube somehow. I don't know. Because someone in the chat, D-Man's like, "What's going on with YouTube?" I'm like, "Something's going on with YouTube." We've never seen. Have we ever seen that happen? YouTube just go down like that? Crap.
It's happened before.
Crap. That's weird. In the middle of a show, though? Like, that might totally screw
Not
with...
in the middle of a show, but it's definitely been down before.
I wonder if that's going to screw with our stream video. Oh, boy.
It's my fault.
Yeah, totally your fault. Totally. Somehow.
I admit it.
Somehow you broke YouTube.
You can just export the Twitch one out to.
Yeah, I might have to. Yeah, I guess I could do that. I forgot.
That'll probably be the way to do it.
Yeah, I haven't done that in so long.
Yeah, it's broken here too. Wow.
Wow, that's so
it's doing
weird.
the thing where to like show me like the layout of where the videos would be if they were there.
What? That's crazy.
And then it briefly showed me an ad for YouTube Music. Oh wait, it might be back.
I just got a whole "this isn't working" thing.
Yeah, I see. According to Down Detector, it's 1745 reports just today.
Oh crap! Oh yeah, tons of people reporting errors like right now. It's delightful. Well, for those of us,
man.
For those
if we
of us,
don't kill Steam, we kill YouTube.
For those of us who are listening on Twitch and whatever else we're broadcasting on, Mixer and YouTube, Facebook, thanks for sticking with us. But wow, that's crazy.
If you're hearing us right now, awesome.
Yes, well done. Well done. That's insane.
Do most of your listeners tune in on YouTube?
Actually, I get the most viewership on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, the live audience versus the residuals. The residuals definitely went out.
Oh my gosh. Oh, Discord. Oh yeah, look at this. One Speed on Twitch says Discord seems to be struggling too, and he's right because the little bandwidth indicator on Discord right now is jumping between 1 and 3 bars, like just back and forth for me. Oh boy. Well, we've been talking for oh wow, we're dropping frames too on OBS. Maybe we should call it a night, you guys, before everything breaks.
Let's go before the internet.
The internet's gonna break.
We've been talking for an hour and a half. That's pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what is happening? So, folks, if you can still hear us, if you can still hear us, the game is Starcom Nexus. You can buy it in about a month and a half-ish as we record this. We're recording this on October 16th, and you are planning, Kevin, on putting it out in early December.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, at least we can still hear each other. At least we can
wishlist it now and then out in early access, early December.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for having me on the show. This is a lot of fun. And,
it was fun.
I would love to come back on again once the game is out.
Oh yeah.
If you want to have me again. That would be
fantastic. Yeah. We typically do that. And speaking of which, our guest for next week, folks, is the developer of Helium Rain. We're having I don't remember how to say his first name.
Is that going to be a morning show? Or
yeah, it has to be because he's in Paris. Yeah, so we has to be a morning show. I don't know if you can swing it. But yeah, he's in Paris. So, I mean, it's either we do a morning show or it's the middle of the night for him, which really, that wouldn't be fair. So yeah, next week is an early morning show, 6 a.m. for Pacific time. We're going to be talking to the developer of the just released. We had him on. Here's the funny thing about that. We had him on a year ago exactly from next week. It's going to be, we had him on October 24th last year. So it's been like exactly a year since we had him on last. How crazy is that? So that's going to be really exciting because, guys, if you haven't played Helium Rain, it is $15 worth of gold. Seriously. It is like for $15, it's a steal for $15. Seriously, the value of that game oh my God. If you guys haven't played Helium Rain, just get it.
You need to play it. You need to play it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they're continuing to work on it too.
Oh,
so
yeah.
just because it's out doesn't mean it's done.
No, they're not done with it. And for Thursday's LAN party, which is also we're doing 5 o'clock across the board now, by the way, folks. 5 o'clock Pacific.
Yeah, until further notice.
Until it might change, but we're gonna try and keep it on top of the hour. So on Thursday, a couple weeks ago, we talked to the developer of Executive Assault 2. That was
25th of last month.
Oh, so about 3 weeks ago. Good memory. So that game is coming out on Thursday. That game is coming into early access on Thursday, and Spaz and I spent about an hour of multiplayer with it last week before last week's stream, and we didn't want to stop. We're like, crap, we got to do this. We got to do the stream. Fine, and we had fun with Dustwind. Dustwind was really a lot of fun. Don't get us wrong, but we wanted to keep playing Executive Assault too, because god damn, that's good. Holy crap, that's good. So that's what we're going to be playing on Thursday. And if you buy it and you want to play with us, just come onto the Discord and let us know. We don't know how many people it supports, but it doesn't have to be just Spaz and me. You know, it could be a few of us. Like, because the thing is, you can have multiple CEOs and you can have multiple executrons. So we could like do a comp stomp.
If we just have a few people, we could all go on to the same team and comp stomp.
Yeah,
With one of us is CEO. I can take the CEO role, and the rest of you are executrons, and we can just see if we can rack it.
Yeah, and it's so fun, you guys. It's so fun. So that game comes out on Thursday, and we're doing a stream of it on Thursday. So if you'd like to join us, just let us know on Discord. And that is, I guess, it. So again, next week's podcast is an early morning podcast. The next two actually are early morning podcasts. Because we love you guys, and we're fine with not getting any sleep.
And needing more caffeine, but that's how.
Oh my god, so many 5-hour energy shots, just so many 5-hour energy. It's so much coffee. But again, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to talk to you about development and about your game, Starcom Nexus, which I don't know if you can tell, we're all very excited about it. We're all like kind of giddy about it.
Thank you again for having me, and it was great to meet you, Brian, Jim, and Spaz. I really had a great time. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure on this. Pleasure's on this side of the table, as they say in Office Space. So thank you everyone for watching, except I guess those on YouTube who can't watch anymore. But thank you everyone for watching and listening, and we'll see you next week.